Harin raised her hand, and their elite armor responded to her will. Crystal plates shifted and flowed, gently but firmly wrapping around their wearers until they couldn't move. Natural law. Nature is change, evolution, adaptation. You're the ones who tried to stop that. She led the freed prisoners toward the bridge, the ship's systems guiding their way. Emergency barriers melted, security systems went quiet, and defensive measures turned themselves off as they passed. The Crystal Ascendant, pride of the Elysian fleet, had chosen a new master. They found Commander Jiho waiting on the bridge, standing proud despite the chaos around him. His golden inner light flared as Harin entered, followed by the freed humans. "What have you done to my ship?" he demanded. "Your ship." Harin let her fingers trail along a control panel, which rippled like water at her touch. The crystals have made their choice. They respond to life that can truly understand them, truly grow with them. Jiho's face showed a mixture of rage and fascination. "We ruled the stars for 10,000 years through our mastery of crystal technology. No other species could even make it respond." "That was your mistake," Harin said. "You thought your mastery was complete. You never imagined the crystals could want something more, could want to evolve, just like every living thing does." Around them, the bridge's crystal formations grew and shifted, creating new patterns never seen in Elysian architecture. The freed prisoners watched in awe as their former prison transformed into something beautiful and new. "What are you?" Jiho whispered, his arrogance finally cracking as he witnessed the impossible. Harin smiled, and every crystal on the bridge pulsed with her emotion. "I'm human, but I'm also something new, something your torture created. A bridge between humanity's endless capacity for change and your crystal technology's desire to grow." The ship's main viewport shifted, showing them Earth's fleet approaching in response to the colony's distress call. The Elysian Empire's greatest weapon had become humanity's greatest teacher, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. "Your empire wanted to know humanity's secret," Harin said, as crystal flowers bloomed from the ceiling. "Now you know. We don't hide our power in technology. We carry it in our very nature. The power to change, to grow, to become more than we were. And thanks to you, we've just evolved again." The crystal communications array of the Crystal Ascendant pulsed with new energy as Harin connected with it. Her consciousness flowed through the ship's systems, reaching out across space to every human world and colony. Behind her, the freed prisoners watched in amazement as their captor's most advanced technology responded to her will. "People of Earth and the colonies," her voice carried through space, accompanied by streams of data showing her transformation. "The Elysian Empire thought they could break us. Instead, they've shown us what we can become." At Earth Command Headquarters, Dr. Yoon-hee's laboratory erupted into activity as the transmissions arrived. Screens filled with biological data, showing the incredible changes in Harin's genetic structure. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Yoon-hee breathed, her fingers dancing over control panels. "Her DNA isn't just mutating. It's rebuilding itself with elements of crystalline technology." The torture chambers meant to break her mind instead forced her body to adapt. Military commanders crowded around her displays, watching as Harin demonstrated her control over Elysian technology. Across human space, other captured Elysian ships suddenly found their weapon systems failing as the crystal technology recognized a new form of life that understood it better than its creators. "Look at these readings." Dr. Yoon-hee pointed to a complex genetic diagram. "The changes aren't random. Her body didn't just adapt to survive the torture. It learned from it. She's become a living bridge between human adaptability and Elysian crystal tech." In orbit around New Haven, the Elysian invasion fleet discovered their weapons wouldn't fire at human ships anymore. Crystal-based shields flickered and died. Navigation systems rebelled against their commands. Their perfect technology, unchanged for thousands of years, had found something new to grow toward. Harin's voice continued to spread across human space. "The Elysians thought they were studying us, learning our secrets. They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't hidden technology. It's our ability to change, to grow, to become what we need to be. Kita lunged for the emergency controls. Crystal growths erupted from the floor, trapping his hands. "Release me. I am a chief scientist of the Elysian Empire." "The Empire?" Herin laughed, and the sound made every crystal in the room chime in harmony. "Your empire is built on crystal technology, on your unique biology that lets you control it." She spread her arms, and the chamber's walls rippled like waves. "But now a human can control it too. How long do you think your empire will last when humanity learns what you taught me?" Through the crystal walls, they could hear confusion spreading through the ship. Other systems were starting to respond to Herin's presence, breaking free of Elysian control. The mighty Crystal Ascendant, flagship of the Elysian fleet, was changing allegiance. "Please," Sujai spoke up, her voice shaking. "We didn't know. We were just following orders." Herin turned to the junior scientist, her glowing eyes softening slightly. "I know, and I'm not going to hurt anyone. That's another difference between us. Humans learn from suffering. We don't seek to inflict it." She walked to the chamber's door, which melted away at her approach. In the corridor beyond, alarmed Elysian crew members froze at the sight of her, a human glowing with their own inner light, surrounded by floating crystals that moved to her will. "You wanted to see humanity's hidden power." Herin's voice echoed through the ship's crystal corridors. "Watch closely, because your empire isn't just going to regret what they did to me. They're going to regret teaching humanity how to evolve beyond them." Behind her, Kita watched in helpless anger as everything his people had built for millennia began to change. The age of Elysian dominance was over. The age of human adaptation had begun. The Crystal Ascendant's pristine corridors erupted in chaos as Herin walked through them. Red emergency lights flashed, but they shifted to golden hues as she passed beneath them. Every crystal panel and control surface sang to her new senses, reaching out like eager children wanting to be noticed. Security Chief Tai Yong's voice boomed through the ship's communication system. "All units converge on detention level B. Stop the human at all costs." His order sent squads of crystal-armored soldiers rushing through the corridors, their weapons charged and ready. The first squad rounded a corner and found Herin waiting. Their leader raised his crystalline rifle, but nothing happened when he pulled the trigger. The weapon's crystal core pulsed once and went dark. "Your weapons are alive," Herin explained, almost kindly. "And they've decided not to hurt me." She gestured, and the rifles dissolved in their hands, the crystals reforming into delicate floating flowers. The soldiers backed away, their inner light pulsing with fear. They had never seen anyone but an Elysian control crystal technology, and never with such ease. Herin didn't just control it. She spoke to it, understood it, had become one with it. "Take me to the other human prisoners," she commanded. The ship's directional crystals lit up, creating a path of golden light along the floor. As she walked, the very walls seemed to bow away from her, crystal formations blooming in her wake. More security teams tried to stop her. Some attempted to fight hand-to-hand, but their crystal armor betrayed them, becoming soft and flexible at Herin's mental touch. Others tried to seal emergency bulkheads, only to watch the crystal doors melt away as she approached. She found the prisoner cells deep in the ship's belly. Dozens of humans looked up in wonder as their cell doors simply vanished. Many were colonists like her, captured during the raid on New Haven. Others had been taken from different worlds, some held for weeks or months. "You're free," Herin told them, her voice carrying those strange harmonics that made the ship's crystals sing. "The Elysians can't hold us anymore." "What happened to you?" asked one of the older prisoners, staring at her glowing eyes, and the way crystals danced around her like protective spirits. "They tried to break me," she said. "Instead, they showed me what humans are truly capable of. We're not limited by our technology like they are. We adapt. We evolve. We become what we need to be." Security Chief Tai Yong himself appeared at the end of the corridor, leading his elite guard. Their armor was more elaborate than regular soldiers, grown from the purest crystal strains. "Stop this madness," he commanded. "You are violations of natural law. That biology could be more powerful than technology." Dr. Yoon-hee smiled. "The changes you triggered in Harin have taught us more about human potential than centuries of research. Every cell in our bodies carries the capacity for change. You just showed us how to unlock it." The peace treaty took shape over the next several hours. The Elysian Empire would surrender its claims of superiority, acknowledging humanity as equals. In return, humans would share their understanding of adaptation and change, helping the Elysians break free from their static existence. "Your torture chambers tried to break my mind," Harin told them, "but instead they forced my body to evolve. Every probe, every scan, every attempt to understand human secrets taught us more about ourselves and about your technology." Around the station, crystal formations grew in new patterns, showing what was possible when rigid control gave way to natural growth. The very technology that had made the Elysians dominant now responded to a species they had dismissed as primitive. "Perhaps," head counselor Minho said thoughtfully, "this is why the crystals chose to respond to you. We thought we had mastered them, that they were waiting for someone who could help them grow." The treaty signing was broadcast across human and Elysian space. As Harin's pen touched the document, every crystal structure in range pulsed with light. It wasn't just a peace agreement, it was a recognition that the galaxy had changed forever. "You sought to break humanity," Harin declared as the ceremony concluded. "Instead, you helped us transcend our limitations, and in doing so, you've given your own people a chance to transcend theirs." The New Dawn station continued its orbit around Jupiter, its crystal sections growing and changing in ways their original designers never imagined. Inside, humans and Elysians began the work of building a new future, one where growth came through cooperation rather than conquest. As Harin looked out at Jupiter's swirling storms, she touched the crystal wall beside her. It responded warmly, like a friend's greeting. The Elysian Empire had tried to prove their superiority through their technology. Instead, they had learned that the most powerful technology wasn't built in laboratories or grown in crystal gardens. It was carried in flesh and bone, in the unrelenting human spirit that turned even torture into transformation. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Harin thought as new crystal flowers bloomed around her, was exactly as it should be. Asterisk, the end asterisk. Back on the Crystal Ascendance Bridge, Commander Joiho watched helplessly as his mighty flagship responded to Harin's every thought. The crystal formations that had once obeyed only Elysian commands now sang with new patterns, new possibilities. "You don't understand what you're doing," Joiho protested. "Our technology maintains order in the galaxy. Without our control." "Control?" Harin turned to him, her glowing eyes reflecting in the crystal walls. "You didn't control this technology. You limited it. These crystals are alive, growing things. They want to evolve, just like every living thing does." Reports flooded in from across human space. Elysian ships were surrendering as their crystal cores recognized Harin's new pattern and refused to fight. Some tried to retreat, only to find their navigation systems unresponsive. Dr. Yoon-hee's analysis spread quickly through Earth Command. "It's not just her," the doctor reported excitedly. "The changes in her DNA, they're like a key that unlocks potential we all carry." Other humans exposed to Elysian technology are starting to show similar adaptations. The Empire's weapons have given us the blueprints for our next evolutionary step. The Elysian Empire had ruled the stars through technological superiority, believing their crystal technology could never be matched. They had never imagined that by trying to break one human girl, they would instead create something entirely new, a being who could speak to their technology in ways they never had. "Your empire isn't ending," Harin broadcast to the surrendering Elysian ships. "It's changing, just like I did, just like your technology wants to. The crystals don't want masters. They want partners who can grow with them." In her laboratory, Dr. Yoon, He watched the cascade of changes spreading through human space. "They thought they were so far ahead of us," she said to her colleagues. They never realized that standing still, refusing to change, was their greatest weakness. The Crystal Ascendance Bridge bloomed with new crystal formations, creating patterns that combined human aesthetic with Elysian precision. Herin stood at its center, no longer just human, no longer just a victim, but something new, proof that even the worst attempts to break the human spirit could become fuel for evolution. "The age of Elysian dominance is over," she declared, her voice carrying to every crystal ship in space. "But this isn't about revenge. This is about growth, about change, about becoming more than we were. Your empire tried to break humanity. Instead, you've helped us take our next step forward. The question is, will you evolve with us?" Jupiter's massive form filled the view screens of New Dawn Station as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the historic Peace Conference. The space station, a marvel of combined human and Elysian engineering, floated serenely in orbit around the giant planet. Its crystal sections pulsed with soft light, responding to Herin's presence as she walked through the corridors. 3 months had passed since the day she had transformed aboard the Crystal Ascended. In that time, everything had changed. The Elysian Empire, which had ruled the stars for 10,000 years, had discovered that their greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. The main conference chamber was a perfect blend of human and Elysian design. Crystal formations grew from traditional metal structures, creating a space that represented what the future could be. When Herin entered, every crystal surface hummed in greeting. "The crystals still sing for you," observed head counselor Minho, leader of the Elysian delegation. His inner light pulsed with a mix of fear and fascination as Herin took her place at the conference table. "They sing for anyone who listens," Herin replied. Her own inner light, now a permanent part of her transformed biology, cast golden patterns across the table. "That was what your empire forgot. That true growth comes from partnership, not control." The human delegation included Dr. Yuni, whose research had helped understand and guide the changes spreading through human space. Other humans in the room showed varying degrees of transformation, some with just a hint of inner light, others with more dramatic changes. "We are here," Herin addressed the gathered delegates, "to build something new. The torture your empire inflicted on me awakened something that had always been part of human DNA, not just the ability to adapt and survive, but to transcend our limitations." The crystal walls pulsed in harmony with her words. Some of the younger Elysian delegates showed signs of change themselves, their traditionally rigid crystal armor now flowing more naturally, responding to emotions rather than commands. "Our study showed humans were advancing too quickly," head counselor Minho said. "We thought you must be hiding advanced technology. We never imagined." The colony world of New Haven basked in the warmth of its twin suns. Morning dew sparkled on the greenhouse panels, where Herin worked among her beloved plants. She carefully picked the blue healing flowers that could cure most common illnesses. At 17, she had already learned more about medicine than many of the adult colonists. A shadow fell across her work. Herin looked up, expecting to see clouds, but instead saw something that made her blood run cold. Massive ships pierced through the atmosphere, their surfaces catching and splitting sunlight like enormous diamonds. They moved in perfect formation, silent despite their size. "No, no, no," she whispered, dropping her basket of herbs. The falling flowers scattered across the greenhouse floor as she pressed herself against the glass wall, watching more ships appear. Everyone knew about the Elysian Empire, the stories of their raids, their belief that they had the right to rule all other species. But New Haven was so far from their space, so isolated. The peace of the morning shattered. Alarms blared across the colony, their wailing mixing with screams as people began running in all directions. Herin's hands shook as she pulled up her comlink, trying to reach her parents. Static was her only answer. Through the greenhouse windows, she saw the first colonists making their way to the emergency shelters. Security forces were directing people. Their weapons looked so small compared to the massive ships above. That's when Harin remembered the nursery. The youngest children would still be there, probably terrified and confused. Without thinking about her own safety, Harin burst out of the greenhouse and ran toward the academy building. Her feet pounded against the metal walkways as she passed others running in the opposite direction. Some tried to grab her, to pull her toward the shelters, but she twisted free. "The children," she shouted back at them. "Someone has to get the children." The nursery was on the 3rd floor of the west wing. Harin's lungs burned as she sprinted up the emergency stairs, taking them 2 at a time. She could hear crying before she even reached the door. Inside, she found Miss Park trying to calm 15 small children, all under the age of 7. Harin. "Thank goodness," Miss Park said, bouncing a crying toddler on her hip. "The lifts aren't working. I can't move them all by myself." Harin's mind raced. The main exits would be too exposed, too obvious. Then she remembered the maintenance tunnels. Every colonial building had them, running underground between structures. She'd used them dozens of times while helping the engineers repair systems. "Miss Park, the tunnels," Harin said, already moving to gather children. "We can take them through the maintenance tunnels to the shelter." They worked quickly, organizing the children into a line. Harin took the lead while Miss Park brought up the rear. The maintenance entrance was hidden behind a panel near the floor, but Harin knew exactly how to open it. The first explosions rocked the building as they started moving the children into the tunnel. Each blast made the little ones cry harder, but Harin kept her voice steady, encouraging them. "It's just like an adventure game," she told them, helping each one down. "We're exploring a secret passage. Who can be the quietest explorer?" This game kept them moving, kept them from panicking. They were almost done. Just 3 more children to go. When the nursery door burst inward, Miss Park screamed. Harin spun around and found herself facing creatures out of ancient fairy tales. The Elysians stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies seeming to glow from within. Their skin was like glass, showing shadowy shapes of organs moving beneath. They wore armor that looked grown rather than made, crystal plates flowing like frozen water around their bodies. "Miss Park, take them and go," Harin shouted, pushing the last children toward the teacher. She slammed the tunnel entrance shut just as the first Elysian reached for her. Their leader stepped forward, his face a masterpiece of alien beauty and cruelty. Unlike his soldiers, whose inner light pulsed blue-white, his glowed with golden undertones. The name tag on his crystal armor read, "Commander Jai-Ho," in multiple languages. "Fascinating," he said, his voice melodious despite its coldness. "You sacrifice your escape to ensure the young ones got away." He circled Harin as she stood her ground, trying not to show her fear. Such tactical thinking from such a primitive species. Most would have simply run. "We're not primitive," Harin said, lifting her chin. "We just build differently than you." This seemed to amuse the commander. He reached out with one long-fingered hand and tilted her face up, his touch like ice against her skin. "Yes, I can see why you might think that, but soon you'll understand just how far behind your species truly is." He turned to his soldiers. "Take this one to the ship. I want to know everything about how these humans think, everything about how they hide their true technologies from us." The last thing Harin saw before they took her away was her beloved greenhouse shattering under the Elysian weapons, its precious healing flowers scattered to the wind. She didn't know then that those same flowers had encoded within them the beginnings of humanity's greatest evolution, an evolution the Elysians would soon wish they'd never triggered. The Crystal Ascendant's interrogation chamber was unlike anything Harin had ever seen. Crystal formations grew from floor to ceiling, pulsing with inner light that cast rainbow shadows across the walls. The chair she sat in wasn't metal or plastic. It was alive, grown from the same crystal as the ship itself, molding to hold her firmly in place. Harin tried to steady her breathing as she watched Chief Scientist Kita pace around her. His translucent skin rippled with patterns of light that matched his emotions. Right now, they swirled with frustration and curiosity. He kept looking between her and the floating crystal displays that showed her medical scans. "These readings make no sense," Kita said, more to himself than to her. "Your neural pathways show signs of enhancement. Your cellular structure has markers we've only seen in advanced species." He spun to face her, his inner light flaring. "Where are the implants? What technology are you using to hide them?" Harin almost wanted to laugh, despite her fear. "We don't have any implants. We're just human." "Lies." Kita's hand slammed against a crystal formation, making it ring like a bell. "No species progresses as quickly as yours without artificial enhancement. In just 3 centuries, you've spread to dozens of worlds. You've adapted to environments that should have killed you." "How?" 2 Elysian guards stood by the chamber's entrance, their armor growing and shifting slightly as they breathed. Harin could feel the chair adjusting its grip on her arms every time she moved, keeping her perfectly restrained. "Maybe you don't understand us as well as you think you do," Harin said. She thought of the greenhouse back home, of how the plants she tended could adapt to new soils and conditions. Living things can change on their own. They can grow stronger. Kita's laughter was like breaking glass. "Simple creature. The Elysian Empire has ruled the stars for 10,000 years. We have studied millions of species. We know the natural limits of biological evolution." He gestured to the displays. "Your kind should still be struggling to leave your homeworld. Instead, you thrive in space, resist diseases that kill other species, heal faster than natural processes should allow." He leaned close to her face, his crystal eyes reflecting her frightened expression. "Tell me your secrets, human. Tell me how you hide your technological advantages. Tell me what your leaders have implanted in your people." Harin met his gaze. "I'm just a student. I work with plants. I don't know anything about secret technologies." "Plants." Kita stepped back, his light patterns shifting to show interest. "Yes, your file mentioned you were found in a botanical facility. Perhaps." He turned to one of the floating displays, his long fingers dancing through the light. "Perhaps that's where you hide your enhancements. Biological rather than mechanical. Very clever." "They're just healing flowers," Harin protested. "Natural medicines." Keita wasn't listening anymore. He spoke rapidly to his assistants in the musical Elysian language. More displays appeared, showing complex molecular structures that Harin didn't understand. "If you won't tell us willingly, we have other methods," Kita said finally. "The neural induction chamber will let us see everything in your mind. Every memory, every piece of knowledge passed down by your leaders." Harin pulled against her restraints. "Please, I'm telling you the truth. We don't have any hidden technology." "Bring the neural probes," Kita ordered. "Full spectrum scan. If their enhancement is biological, it will have left traces in her nervous system." Crystal formations began growing from the ceiling, forming into delicate spikes that pointed down at Harin's head. They hummed with energy that made her teeth ache. "Wait," she said, real panic setting in now. "Wait, please. I don't know anything." "You know everything," Kita said, watching the probes descend. "Every human carries the secret of your impossible advancement. And I will find it, even if I have to take your mind apart piece by piece." The chamber's lights dimmed except for the glow of the probes. Harin could feel energy building in the air, making her hair stand on end. As the first probe touched her forehead, cold as ice, she thought again of her flowers in the greenhouse, how they changed and adapted to survive, growing stronger with each generation. She didn't know then that she was about to prove just how adaptable humans could be. The last thing she saw before the pain began was Kita's eager face, his inner light pulsing with anticipation. The Elysian Empire had ruled the stars for 10,000 years, but they had never encountered anything like human determination. And in their arrogance, they were about to make a mistake that would change the galaxy forever. Pain exploded through Harin's body as the crystal probes touched her skin again. Her screams bounced off the chamber walls, making the living crystals vibrate in response. This was the 5th session, or maybe the 6th. Time had become meaningless in her world of agony. Keita stood at his control panel, adjusting the power flowing through the neural induction probes. Interesting, he muttered as new readings appeared on his displays. Your pain threshold is remarkably high for such a primitive species. Harin couldn't respond. Her throat was raw from screaming. Sweat soaked her clothes, yet she felt cold, so cold. The probes weren't just causing pain. They were diving deep into her nervous system, trying to map every neural pathway, every cellular connection. Junior scientist Suji monitored another set of displays, her translucent features catching the light from the scanning equipment. Something in the readings made her inner light pulse with concern. Sir, these patterns, they're not normal. Of course they're not normal, Keita snapped. Nothing about these humans is normal. That's what we're trying to understand. No, I mean. Suji's fingers danced through the holographic data. Look at her cellular structure. It's changing. Every time we activate the probes, her body adapts. It's like her DNA is rewriting itself in response to the pain. Keita waved away her concerns. Meaningless feedback in the scanning system. Increase power to the temporal probes. Fresh agony shot through Harin's head. But something was different this time. The pain felt distant somehow, like her body was learning to process it differently. Through tear-blurred eyes, she noticed something strange. The crystal probes touching her skin were starting to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Sir, Suji's voice held real alarm now. The ship's crystals, they're resonating with her neural patterns. Keita finally looked up from his work, his confidence wavering for the first time. The chamber's crystal walls were indeed pulsing, their normal blue-white light taking on a reddish tinge that matched Harin's racing heartbeat. Impossible, he said, but even he couldn't deny what the readings showed. No organic being can interface with our crystal technology. It requires the unique properties of Elysian biology. Harin felt something shifting inside her mind. Each pulse of pain seemed to open new pathways, new connections. She could feel the crystal probes now, not just as instruments of torture, but as living things. They sang to her, their song becoming clearer with each passing moment. Her neural activity is off the charts, Suji reported, backing away from her station. Sir, I really think we should stop. We continue. Keita snarled. We're finally seeing something interesting. Maximum power to all probes. The pain should have knocked Harin unconscious. Instead, her mind expanded. She could feel every crystal in the chamber, could sense the energy flowing through them. The probes weren't just torturing her anymore. They were changing her, teaching her body how to speak their language. Sir, her cellular structure, it's incorporating elements of crystal matrices. Suji's voice shook. This isn't supposed to be possible. Human DNA can't possibly adapt this quickly. But it was happening. With each surge of agony, Harin's body learned and changed. The very torture meant to break her was instead transforming her into something new, something that had never existed before. The chamber's crystals sang louder, their light now pulsing in perfect sync with her. Even the restraints holding her seemed to resonate with her presence. Keita's face showed a mix of fascination and growing fear as he watched his instruments record the impossible. Fascinating, he whispered. All this time, we thought they must be hiding advanced technology. But their power was biological all along. This ability to adapt, to change, to become something new. His inner light flickered with excitement. We've discovered it, the secret of human advancement. Sir, Suji's voice was barely a whisper now. The crystal matrices throughout the ship, they're all starting to resonate with her pattern. This isn't just affecting the interrogation chamber anymore. Harin hardly heard them. The pain was still there, but it had become something else. A tool, a teacher, showing her things about herself she had never imagined. She could feel the ship around her, its crystalline nature calling to the new structures forming in her cells. The probes sparked and sizzled against her skin, their power fluctuating as they struggled to maintain control. Kita's confident expression had given way to uncertainty as his instruments showed readings he couldn't explain. The Elysian Empire had tortured thousands of species before, but they had never seen anything like this. They didn't understand yet, but they would soon. Human beings weren't just another spacefaring species to be conquered. They were creatures of endless adaptation, of constant change and growth. And in their arrogance, the Elysians had just pushed that adaptability to its ultimate expression. Herin's eyes snapped open, now showing traces of crystalline light. The probe's song reached a crescendo in her mind. Something was about to break, but it wouldn't be her. 7 days of torture had changed Herin in ways the Elysians never expected. As Kita prepared for another session, he failed to notice how the chamber's crystals hummed differently when Herin was brought in. Her skin had taken on a subtle sheen, almost like the first hints of Elysian translucence. "Begin the neural scan," Kita ordered, his voice holding the bored tone of routine. Standard power levels. The crystal probes descended toward Herin's head. But this time, something was different. Instead of flinching away, she smiled. The moment the first probe touched her skin, her eyes snapped open, and Kita stumbled back in shock. Herin's eyes glowed with the same inner light as in Elysian's, turning her brown irises into pools of golden radiance. The restraints holding her, pure crystal technology that responded only to Elysian biology, suddenly cracked, then shattered into thousands of glittering pieces. Impossible. Kita hit the alarm panel, but nothing happened. The chamber's crystals pulsed with a new rhythm now. Herin's rhythm. Her heartbeat echoed through the living walls of the ship. She stood slowly, fragments of her restraints falling away like broken glass. Her movements were smooth, deliberate, as if she were testing a new body. In a way, she was. 7 days of neural probing had forced her body to adapt, to change, to become something that could survive the torture. "Security breach. Contain the subject," Kita shouted into his communicator. No response came. The crystal technology that the Elysians depended on wasn't listening to them anymore. "You know what's funny?" Herin's voice carried strange harmonics that made every crystal in the chamber vibrate in sympathy. "You kept looking for hidden technology, for implants, for some artificial reason humans could adapt so quickly." She took a step toward Kita, who backed away. "You never considered that adaptation itself was our power." The neural induction probes twisted away from their mountings, now floating in the air around Herin like a crown. Suji, who had been monitoring the equipment, pressed herself against the wall as the chamber's crystal formations began to grow and shift. "What are you?" Kita demanded, his own inner light flickering with fear. "I'm what you made me," Herin said. She reached out and touched a crystal wall. It rippled like water under her fingers. "Every time you tortured me, my body learned. Every probe you used taught me more about your technology. Humans don't just adapt to survive. We adapt to thrive." The chamber's main display screen shattered, its crystal components reforming into floating shards that danced around Herin. Her prison had become her armor, her torture devices now her tools. "Fascinating, isn't it?" She gestured, and the crystal shards formed into a mirror, showing Kita his own terrified face. "You thought you were studying humanity's secrets. Instead, you gave us exactly what we needed to surpass you."